everyone to please keep yourselves on mute. Please mute your microphone if you are not currently speaking, just so we can avoid any unnecessary interference on the recording. If you don't know how to do that, please let us know and we'll try to help you out. We're going to ask everyone to please
Jonathan, you've muted
I'm
yourself.
so sorry, I just muted myself. Where did I leave off? What was the last thing you heard?
You're going to ask everyone to please
mute. Please mute your microphone so we can avoid any interference on the recording. Sorry about that. And then the final thing I wanted to ask everybody was to please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. But if you do have a question that pops up, please feel free to put that into the chat. My colleague Julie Karmelik is going to be moderating the questions in the chat, and we will make sure that we try to address all of them, or as many as we can, at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in, and first thing I'm going to do is just provide you with a few quick bullet points. They're basic but critically important to understanding what a statewide historic preservation plan is and why we are here having this conversation. So essentially, the statewide historic preservation plans are one of our federal mandates from the National Park Service. One of our requirements in order to apply for funding through the Historic Preservation Fund is to develop a statewide historic preservation plan. And as you can see here, that is a mandate from the National Park Service, and that comes out of Section 101 of the 1966 National Historic Preservation Act, which essentially states that it shall be the responsibility of the SHPO to administer the State Historic Preservation Program. And then one of the sort of sub-responsibilities there for the SHPO is that the preparation and implementation of that statewide plan. So the real goal of this plan is to encourage as much participation and as much collaboration as we're able to put into it. Essentially, planning for the preservation of our historic and cultural resources, but we want to focus in and make sure that we're meeting the challenges that are specific to Connecticut. We're also attempting to influence historic preservation policy and also trying to inspire local communities, organizations, and individuals to action at their level. So probably the most important piece that I'm going to say on this particular slide is that this plan is really intended to have a statewide focus. While SHPO is the entity, the organization that's charged with the development of the plan is really intended for the entire state of Connecticut. It's really intended for all of you and all of our partner organizations. And I'll just go through this really quick, and this is from the National Park Service. As a statement of public policy, the statewide plan serves as a general guide for decision-making. While the SHPOs take the lead, it is a result of collaboration, as I said. Everyone involved in the planning process can and should adopt and implement the goals and objectives of the plan so that these challenges can be met at the community and state level. So we'll go into a little bit more about the meat of the plan and the goals and objectives that are developed as part of it. But one of the things that we're constantly thinking about as we're going into this plan development process is ensuring that the plan is not just one for SHPO. We have to ensure that all of the organizations across the state and the state itself are able to adopt this plan, work on this plan, work through the plans and the goals and objectives, and to sort of take it and make it your own in your community. So there are certain pieces that are absolutely required by the National Park Service to be in the plan, and I'm just going to run through those quickly, as I am already running out of time. The first piece that is required to be in the plan is essentially a summary of the planning process. And this is a detailed but concise review of the steps taken to gather data, collaborate with our partners, encourage public participation in the process, and develop those goals and objectives that you're going to hear a little bit more about. The plan needs to include a clear statement of the planning cycle, which is straightforward. Right now, we're looking at a plan cycle of 2024 to 2029. The plan also needs to include a summary assessment of historic and cultural resources. This is sort of an overview of not only the issues and the threats that our historic resources in the state are facing, but also opportunities that might be available to us or might be coming up. We want to also make sure that this section includes an analysis of our inventory and our registration data, outside data sources that are pertinent to historic preservation, such as economic impact studies, housing studies. We want to make sure that we're looking at all of those studies to make sure that our plan is working in tandem and moving in the same direction as those other goals. And then obviously, the most important piece of that is feedback from our stakeholders and the public. We also want to create a vision statement for historic preservation for this plan period, and that really comes out of our conversations with you as we go through this process. The conversations that we have with the public and our partners lead directly to the creation of those goals. And then on to the goals and objectives, which are really the meat of the plan. The goals are sort of overarching broad statements about our future desired conditions regarding our cultural resources in the state. But the objectives are sort of the action items. You can think of the goals as sort of the umbrella and the objectives as the action items. These are feasible, attainable, realistic sort of desired outcomes. And then we want to make sure that, again, we're proposing objectives and goals that can be adopted by our partners. And then the final section is a bibliography, which is essentially just the list of the sources that were used by SHPO, by our partners, to develop the plan. So just a very quick snapshot of the current plan we are operating under. It is entitled Shared Stewardship, and it covers the period from 2018 to 2023, and it is available online. I have the link here, and I believe my colleague Jenny Schofield has already put the link in the meeting chat. So if you wanted to access the existing plan, to review it, to go over the goals and objectives, please do that. We would encourage you to do that and provide us with any feedback that you have on that. So this plan was developed between 2017 and 2018 by SHPO staff with extensive input from the public and our partners. The plan will expire, it technically expires December 31st of this calendar year. However, we have worked with the National Park Service and obtained a 1-year extension for the development, resulting from COVID and then the complications and delays that has put in place. The Park Service is granting extensions to SHPOs to ensure that we have enough time to do this properly and create a really solid plan that will work for us for the next 5 or 6 years. So where we are now, let me lay out kind of where we are now. We're currently analyzing this existing plan in anticipation of moving forward with the development of the new plan. And this includes an analysis of information gaps, potential needs that we did not address, what resource types or communities or geographic areas may have been missed during this period or that we could do more in. We also are doing a critical look at those goals and objectives, and we're going to go into that with you guys here in another few minutes to understand where we've made a lot of progress, where we've had a lot of success, where we've met some challenges or had shortcomings, etc. And then the final thing we want to do is take that analysis that we're doing and put it into our discussions with our partners, with the public as we move forward into more outreach activities, and use that analysis to sort of shape how the future plan will look. And while we're having that conversation on the goals, I want to encourage all of our partners and the folks on the call today to think about where you may have, your organization or you individually may have accomplished these goals or objectives, because you're part of the preservation network in Connecticut as well, and we can certainly celebrate and list those accomplishments that you have undertaken as well in that summary of where we're at. So on that note, I am going to we're going to move into a discussion of the goals from the existing plan, and I'm going to turn it over to some of my colleagues to discuss the first 3 goals, and I'll come back to just do a quick wrap up of goal 4.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. This is Mary Dunn. I'm going to be discussing goals 1 and 2 very briefly. As Jonathan has mentioned, the title of our plan, our current plan, is Shared Stewardship. So our partnerships have really driven a lot of how we have achieved our goals and objectives. And it's really great to see such a large gathering of of people from so many different groups, nonprofits, private developers, state agencies, state reps. Because as Jonathan said, this plan is not just SHPO's plan. It's not just our strategic plan. This will be developed in partnership with as many people as possible across the state of Connecticut to develop a plan that we can all take advantage of. So having already taken up half my time, I'm going to go over goal 1, which was enrich and expand partnerships. And we really do rely and value our current partners like Preservation Connecticut, Hartford Preservation Alliance, New Haven Preservation Trust, our municipal local historic district commissions. And so one of the action items under this goal was to strengthen and nurture existing partnerships. And examples of that would be, we partnered with Preservation Connecticut to produce the Olmsted in Connecticut Landscapes Documentation Project. And we worked with the National Association of Olmsted Parks, but this project itself led to our having access to new types of partners. We partnered with City of Waterbury, Friends of Keeney Park, Groundworks in Bridgeport, and many of the private property owners that were included in this survey of Olmsted or Olmsted firm designed landscapes. One of our strongest activities is our partnership with Preservation Connecticut and the Circuit Rider Program, which we fund, and we worked very closely with PCT to carry out preservation goals under that. We've enhanced that program. Notably, we hired an archaeology circuit rider 2 years ago, which has helped a lot. We are helping to fund state register nominations for private homeowners so they can have access to the Historic Homes Tax Credit Program. We're currently working on updating National Register nominations. And of course, we have partnered with the circuit riders to do our local historic district commission training, which we try to do at least 6 times a year. But beyond our existing partners, we obviously want to expand our state, local, and nonprofit partners. And so we've taken on 4 new certified local governments over the last 5 years, which is about on par. We try to do at least 1 a year, but we do have some in the hopper. But we Enfield, Madison, Torrington, and Wilton all became CLGs. We've gotten applications from new municipalities like Newington and Stafford Springs. Those are areas that I don't think we've really worked with in a long time, so that's good. Jenny recently sat on a panel to assist with developing planning and goals for the Plan of Conservation and Development for the town of Stratford. And we developed a story map so that we can actually track where our funding and tax credits and services are going so that we can identify gaps to bring in new partners. And we just hope that all of this is going to result in cultivating a preservation network. Before COVID, as you know, we had a statewide conference every year. And I really believe that helped to develop our partnerships and also a network of preservationists across the state. And we're hoping now that things have, well, COVID is not gone, but we're getting back to a new normal. We really hope to institute the statewide conference in the coming years. Our second goal was to enhance education efforts. And there were 3 objectives under that goal. The first was to improve the delivery of information to the public. And I think the biggest effort on our part in that regard has been the development of CONCRIS, which stands for the Connecticut Cultural Resource Information System. And this is going to provide easy online access to the last 70 years of SHPO paper files. We began this right before COVID, which meant we had to ship boxes and boxes and boxes of paper records to the consultant for scanning, which they shipped back to us because we couldn't have on-site scanning. But nearly 100,000 pages just from our surveys were scanned. This system is going to provide access to those paper records through linked PDFs to the location points that you'll be finding on the map in the system. We're planning a soft launch for April 14th, so stay tuned about that. But that's probably the one of the biggest projects we've undertaken in the last 5 years. We also needed to strengthen our outreach and training programs because preservation policies and procedures are not always very clear to everybody. Prior to COVID, we were partnering with Preservation Connecticut to do our yearly fall and spring workshops. We were guest lecturing at UConn and Central. We were presenting myriad workshops on a number of topics on sustainability, energy efficiency, archaeological preserves, historic dams, the Secretary of the Interior standards, and of course, all of our grant and tax credit programs. And we were presenting these to a wide range of audiences like Connecticut Green Bank, American Institute of Architects, municipalities, other state agencies, even high schools. Since March of 2020, when COVID hit, we had to switch to virtual, but we averaged about at least 3 presentations a month on top of participating in other partner virtual workshops. And we continue to do a lot of virtual training, but probably since summer of 2021, we've gone back into in-person sessions and in-person site visits, which has been nice. And a third action item under that goal was to promote a historic preservation ethic in Connecticut, because communities don't always recognize the value of historic preservation. So we worked with 2 interns from the UConn School of Business to develop a economic impact study of our SHPO programs statewide, and we're finalizing that, and we'll make that available. We assist town planners in integrating historic preservation into their local decision-making. We've funded several municipal preservation plans. We've assisted with public planning charrettes around, little used historic resources. And of course, we hope to reinstitute our statewide preservation conference. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking, and I believe I'm going to hand it over to Kathy Labadia to talk about Goal 3.
Thank you very much, Mary. I'm Kathy Labadia. I'm the staff archaeologist and Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer. Glad everyone could join us today. I think that, when we talk about the goal of diversity and, and within our plan that was specifically for both diversifying audiences and the resource types that we recognize, and we're working within this umbrella of shared stewardship, much of the preservation objectives that we've been talking about don't neatly fit into just 1 or 2 of these buckets. Rather, they are overflowing and overlapping into all areas. And I think this is particularly true when we talk about diversifying both audiences and resources, because it naturally entails part of the education that goes along with Goal 2 and the partnerships that go along with Goal 1. So what I want to talk about today is just I'm going to highlight some of the larger or more unique initiatives that our office has undertaken over the past 5 years, as well as talk about some of projects that our partners have spearheaded that we've been a part of. So I think everybody recognizes the long-standing program at SHPO, which is the Connecticut Freedom Trail, which is designed to document and recognize places that embody the struggle for freedom and human dignity and celebrate African American communities as being a cornerstone of our work. And while this program during this period has been redesigned with assistance from the Connecticut Democracy Center, one very exciting development that has come out of it is now working with descendant communities of both Caesar Peters in Hebron and Venture Smith in Stonington. It is adding a whole new dimension of connecting people to the past in a more meaningful way. The National Register program, however, is probably SHPO's primary way to convey significance of place. And Jenny Schofield has been working with the Cape Verdean community in Norwich to bring forward a nomination. It's not a very well-known community, but Cape Verde is or was a former Portuguese colony off the coast of Senegal. There's a number of migrants who settled in Connecticut. The nomination was preceded by both documentary and oral history project that identified all the important places where this community lived, worked, and socialized. And the nomination, when it was completed, was embraced with so much enthusiasm by the community that it really fostered a great sense of pride in both the people and the place. To find places eligible for the National Register, however, our office frequently engages in that first step, which is survey. And so Mary mentioned the Olmsted survey that we did in conjunction with Preservation Connecticut. This was important for our office because it gets at that idea, not so much the audiences, but diversifying the resources that we're recognizing. And so this is not to say that landscapes were not recognized, but we had not had put together the level, the inventory, or the type of context we needed for these designed landscapes. And so while we're definitely not at the end point, this is going to establish for us a really good, strong starting point for increasing our recognition of these resource types. In addition to when I think about landscapes, it brings me back to something that I've been personally involved with, which is the Morehouse College Summer Work Program in Simsbury. And luckily, through amazing partnerships, we were able to preserve this landscape as well as the little but profound impact this place had on the lives of students who became important leaders in the civil rights movement. And now we can use that place to recognize and share that story in a way that would not have been available otherwise. And then to echo some of the points that Mary raised, this isn't really our plan, but we have been involved in plans that other folks are really involved with spearheading. So for example, the Ridgefield Historical Society received an American Battlefield Protection Plan grant. And as part of that grant, what they have been doing is creating an experience for people who may be visually impaired by creating a walking tour with QR codes that can then describe the place to you and read to you all the signage that exists in the at the property. And this is at Putnam Memorial State Park. And the great thing about it too is they've taken this opportunity to really increase what that story is. So they spend a lot of time researching Revolutionary War soldiers of African American and Indigenous ancestry. So really, diversifying how we're looking at history and who we're bringing into being able to experience it. Our office also has been working with I'm sorry, that was all with Chris Radio and Forgotten Voices. The Battle of Ridgefield was another project that we were working on, which also spent a lot of time looking at who were these other soldiers that were involved in the Revolutionary War and giving honor and recognition. And I think when you have that, when you increase the narrative, people are naturally more drawn to what the history is because you can relate to it or identify with it. Our office also is part of Connecticut's 250th Commission, which has gone to great lengths to make sure that they are being represented by a diverse group of individuals, as well as working under a rubric of inclusivity, diversity, equity, and access. So all of the programming is going to be working within that. And I think, like I said, they've gone to great lengths to increase diversity in both, in every sector that you can imagine: age, gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity. And I think that is one thing that we've been doing with our own boards in houses, is trying to increase that diversity, and something that we've seen across the board with all of our partners. And so with that, I will turn it back to Jonathan to talk about resiliency.
Thanks, Kathy. So goal 4 was to develop a resilience strategy for historic resources. We accomplished quite a bit under this goal, although there's certainly more work to do, and I envision that this work will carry forward into the next plan in some form or another as one of our goals. But this goal really built on SHPO's post-Hurricane Sandy work, which is all documented and all available on our website if you're interested in looking at that. And this essentially means to increase SHPO's ability to respond to emergencies regarding effects on historic resources, integrating preservation into state and local planning, raising awareness about the effects of climate change on historic resources, and also promoting sustainable solutions for historic properties. We are actively participating in a number of state hazard planning initiatives, and that includes the state agencies fostering resilience council, the state plan of conservation and development update, and as well as the Connecticut state hazard mitigation plan update for 2023. We also, as was mentioned previously, have completed and are getting set to roll out our GIS system called Conchris, which can be overlain and can be a powerful tool to use in emergency planning situations. We did provide our statewide cultural resource data to Circa at UConn for integration into their climate vulnerability models. We also, the GIS system that we're preparing to roll out will also enable better access to data for municipalities and COGs for integrating into their plans. And one of our future goals, one of the things we're hoping to do, is to establish a stronger relationship with CCM and to do additional outreach to the COGs to see if there's any additional information that we can provide to them that would help on this front. We've also done a number of other things, which include sponsoring and participating in the statewide Historic and Green Conference at UConn. We've provided articles about the intersection of preservation and sustainability topics for partner organization magazines. We've promoted green preservation as an economic development strategy. And we've also added a number of items to our website with relations to this goal, which include resiliency and hazard mitigation section to the website. And that includes guidance documents from both the National Park Service and FEMA, and as well as 2 reports that were commissioned by the SHPO, Historic Resilience Planning in Connecticut, and a best practices guide for municipal planners. We've also created a historic preservation and energy efficiency page on our website and posted several resources to that page as well. And at this point, I am going to turn it over. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Marina Wisniewski to talk about our proposed timeline.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. So hi, everyone. I'm Marina Wisniewski, State Register Coordinator and also Environmental Review at the SHPO. And so what we have talked about is all the stuff that we've done and all the stuff that we would like to do. So now I want to give you a quick timeline about how we are going to get there. First of all, can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up, please.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay,
Nope.
Give me 1 second. That VPN.
Looks like it's trying to do something.
It's trying. It's thinking.
I can't see it. I don't know if others can. Can anyone else see it? No. Okay.
No, it's not up yet.
All right, let's try this instead. How about that?
Got it.
All right, great. So we're starting right now with our engagement, and that's going to go from March, technically still in March, through May 2023, where our goal is to work on our collaboration with our partnerships, encourage lunchtime meetings that we're going to have scheduled, and then report out on the progress of our previous plan, which we just did. From June through August of this year, based on that feedback we've gotten in engagement, we're going to craft goals and vision. In September through December of 2023, the rest of the year, we're going to do some additional public engagement, report back on the types of goals that we have come up with, and get back more of that feedback based on our partners and the general public's reception to those types of goals. January 2024, we're really going to be working on writing and putting together the different aspects of the plans, especially all those goals and our overall vision. In March 2024, we're going to have a draft internal document. That's our internal due date. Basically, a year from now is we want to have a real draft that we can work with. In spring 2024, we are also going to be working on doing a graphic design so that this plan can be very accessible, both in print and online as a resource. In July 2024, we are going to submit that draft to NPS for review and comments, and we are going to then buffer some time between summer and September of 2024 for additional editing based on the comments we receive back from the NPS. We hope to have our final plan complete in October 2024, and then through the rest of the fall and the winter to really roll it out to the public. And so that's our basic timeline of how we're going to do that. And then Jonathan is going to give you our sketch of our public outreach plan going forward.
Thanks, Marina. Share this again. Okay. Can everybody see that? Great, thank you. So just two quick slides. As Marina said, a little bit more detail on how we are proposing to do our outreach and involve as many folks as we can in the development of this plan. Here's just a few quick points, primarily language from the MPS as to what they are encouraging for the public outreach piece. It must include a robust public engagement strategy. We're essentially looking to gather as much data as we can that could potentially affect our historic resources from a number of angles and potentially influence what we do and how we do it. Sorry about that. The planning approach is essentially intended to engage a diverse group of communities, large and small, urban and rural, throughout the entire state. We really want to empower local communities and organizations to take the plan and enact pieces of it or the entire plan in their local communities, or use it as a piece to advocate in their local communities for stronger preservation action. It encourages diverse viewpoints, which we will certainly use as we gather this information and as we have these conversations, as I said earlier, to develop those short and long-term goals and objectives. We are also wanting to make sure that we're factoring in other planning processes, as I mentioned earlier. So we want to make sure that we are being cognizant and understanding where other planning organizations, where other agencies are going with their planning efforts. And then finally, we want to make sure that we are representing the sort of breadth of resources that we have in the state, and making sure that the plan can be applied to all of those different types of resources. And finally, just a quick outline. So on the top left here, you'll see sort of a quick snapshot of how outreach was done for the current plan, and the different tools that were used. I envision a similar setup for this plan, although we may lean a little bit more on technology if that's doable in this process. But we will certainly think about that and share additional information with you as we develop those outreach pieces. And then down below, you'll see a bulleted list of the different types of organizations that the National Park Service encourages us to reach out to. It is a very broad list, but we want very broad participation. So I suspect that we will be reaching out to hopefully all of these types of organizations. And again, if you have if your organization or you individually have a network of folks that are in these types of organizations, or belong to an organization of one of these types that would like to participate or share information, we certainly encourage that, and we look forward to those future conversations. And at this point, I think I'm going to stop sharing, and I think we are ready to jump into questions and answers. And I will sort of just open up the floor.
So we haven't received anything in the chat.
Okay.
But I would just ask, if you want to ask a question, if you could raise your hand, I will call on you and unmute you, and you can ask your question. Okay. Somebody raised their hand. I'm just trying to find them. Okay. I am going to call on Nanette first. Nanette, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, go ahead.
Hi. Very simple. You mentioned surveys. How will we access those? Or your polls and surveys?
We will probably be putting something out in an e-blast through our newsletter. So if you're not on our newsletter, please let me know. You can email me and I will add you to our newsletter. That is our primary way of engaging our audience regarding surveys and information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Lori, Weinstein, if you want to unmute yourself. Lori, I think you need to unmute yourself. Nope. No. Okay. Let me see. Oh,
You hear
okay.
me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Yay. What do you want us to do? I mean, what is our, what is it we're gonna do as this big group of people?
Are you going to take? I can take that, Julie. Yeah. Thank you, Lori. We at this moment there's nothing to do. But I do encourage. I'm not sure exactly which organization you're with, but I would encourage you to sort of think about how your organization may tie into the goals that we're reviewing right now in the current plan. Think about where are there things that are missing from preservation in Connecticut, just sort of questions you may have, or resource types that you don't think are being addressed. All of that feedback is incredibly valuable to us. So if you want to start having those conversations with your organizations or colleagues and just have that information ready for when we're reaching out with surveys or holding a workshop, or I anticipate we'll be doing some in-person meetings across the state. Please come participate and share that information with us. It will be incredibly valuable for us.
Okay, next I'm going to call on Ingrid Wood. Ingrid, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you very much. A great talk and presentation. I represent, I'm a town historian in Columbia, but I also am a director for the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route Organization, which is a National Park Service partner. And I'm curious if you could, Jonathan, perhaps explain, or Kathy, just how you plan to proceed in planning with the National Park Service on like a national historic trail, even though it is a virtual trail at this point. Thank you.
Kathy, do you want to talk about that a little bit? I have not delved into that yet, but
Yeah, I think I can answer.
Yeah.
I think I can start by saying I don't think that idea has fully been developed or fomented in any way. So I think what's taking, which makes sense for Washington Rochambeau, and there's going to be a lot of synergy with what's happening with the 250th Commission. But our historic trails in general, I think the past 5 years, Todd Levine has done a great job with the Connecticut Freedom Trail and highlighting that and take it in a new direction. But if we're specifically talking about the National Park Service Trail in Washington Rochambeau, I think we're going to let a lot of the events and guidance coming out of the 250th Commission help us with that, which it's also at a point in time where it can be rethought about and reinvented. And this is part of what this planning process helps us with, is by the community communicating to us what is important to them and where they think that we should be focusing our efforts. That's what we want to hear from you. So, Ingrid, happy to have you, reach out to me. We can have a longer private conversation about this, but I'd love to hear your ideas. And that's the stuff that really is going to help feed our work over the next 5 years. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Scott, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, John, everybody over there, SHPO team, colleagues. This is Scott SHPO from DOT. I'd like to ask a little bit about, for instance, in this next iteration, in the last one, there is a lot of emphasis on, for instance, the documented and nomination and established resources, a lot of structural stuff, and a lot less on the identification of previously unrecognized resources or those that are not really candidates for nomination. especially things like archaeological resources. There was a section on preserves in the last one, but that was just about it, it seemed like. And also a lot of emphasis in the last plan on local communities, organizations, NGOs, and the public, but not much on other state and federal agencies as partners under Section 106 and SHPO compliance arrangements, even though, of course, this is a huge component of what takes place, in the interaction and, what's in the way of the bulldozer, so to speak, all the time. So I'm wondering if those kind of things will be addressed a little bit more in the next iteration.
So can I take this one for a little bit?
Yeah.
And then I'll share with my colleagues. I think, Scott, I don't want anybody to walk away today with this is all we've done in the past 5 years. So I put together a long list for Mary this morning, which was exceptionally boring about the number of state agencies and municipalities and other groups that we've met with to talk about Section 106 and the environmental review process and the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act. Last week, we did a full training for our Historic Preservation Council, where we talked about the archaeology preserves. I've done several presentations for regional archaeology conferences, as well as Native American roundtables and other things. So even though we haven't gotten into all of those other things today, I don't want you to think that we ignored them and now we're going to suddenly add them in the next time. There is this base level of effort that I think SHPO always believes that it should be doing and has been doing and is going to continue to do. But sometimes the way we phrase those conversations and look at them is guided by the goals and objectives of our statewide plan. So you can rest assured there will be plenty more archaeology coming up, as well as Section 106 and regulatory responsibilities.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, the last person with their hand raised at the moment is Christine. Christine, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you for giving us this opportunity to get your information. I'm calling from West Haven, Connecticut, and we're dealing with the steeple, the historic steeple. And I noticed that your plan, the next plan is for 2024 through 2029. My question is, we are still waiting to hear for state funding. And I don't know if it's going to come through this year or not. So I'm just wondering if we will fit into the timeline plan.
Christine, can you just clarify what funding you're waiting on? I just want to make sure that we're giving you the right information.
We're supposed to be getting a $300,000 grant from the state for the historic steeple to, because it's in the center of town and it's considered, well, it's got a long, long history. And so the state has said they would provide the $300,000, but it has been very long and slow in coming. We're still in a process of getting Valley Restoration accepted by the state. So the steps are very long, and I'm just wondering how long the steps are going to be so that they would still fit into the plan. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I'm just worried that
Hi,
we're not.
Christine. Hi, Christine.
Yeah.
This is Marina Wisniewski. So I think if you'd like to, if we can connect after the meeting and see where the status is, where it comes to the funding. I believe that's coming through a DECD grant. So I'm happy to kind of speak with you after and direct you to the correct people to check on and see where they are in the progress. Okay?
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no additional questions, I want to thank everyone. Oh, I see something in the chat. I just want to thank everyone so much for coming and for participating. Again, this is the very beginning of this process and this conversation. So I anticipate we will be scheduling additional outreach sessions and webinars similar to this, as well as those surveys and those in-person meetings. So please stay tuned. If you have any questions, please reach out. Again, we encourage you to you reach out with anything that your organization is working on or has worked on that might apply here. And we look forward to working through this process with everyone. Thank you all.